And it's time to take a look at the latest business news with our very own Kate Moody. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Aurora.
We're starting with some good news for the UK economy.
Yeah, it's growing at its fastest pace since late 2007. The government confirmed GDP growth of 0.8% for the second quarter. That's the same as at the very beginning of the year. It also revised upwards its annual rate of growth from 3.1 to 3.2%. The service sector, which makes up more than 75% of economic activity, remained the main driver of growth, while the construction sector also performed better than expected. Those figures, of course, come in stark contrast to Thursday's growth figures from the Eurozone. GDP growth in both Germany and Italy slipped into decline, while France and the Eurozone as a whole stagnated at 0% growth. Despite that flatline, François Hollande remains optimistic that his plan to cut payroll taxes and boost job creation will in fact put the French economy back on track.
France is the world's fifth biggest economy, and with these reforms, it intends to stay at that level. France counts in the world and on the international stage.
Asian markets saw one of their best trading days in months this Friday, but we saw a more mixed picture here in Europe. The major indices tumbled late in the trading session amid fears about a new outbreak of violence in Ukraine. Just the FTSE closing in the green there, still riding high on that news of strong economic growth in the UK. We saw a mixed end to the week on Wall Street as well. Earlier in the session, the Dow lost 130 points. That's most of its gains for the year so far. It recovered slightly, but just the Nasdaq ending in positive territory there. Next week, we'll be hearing from both the Federal Reserve Chief Janet Yellen and European Central Bank Mario Draghi. Investors will be waiting for those remarks in light of this week's very weak European data. Now, bank accounts for all. That's the promise from India's Narendra Modi, marking his first Independence Day since sweeping to power 3 months ago. He called for more global manufacturing in India, hoping to return the economy to its once booming levels of growth. Luke Brown has the details on the new Prime Minister's economic agenda.
Narendra Modi raises the flag on India's Independence Day. The new Prime Minister outlining his government's objectives, including a vow to eradicate poverty. With that goal, Modi promising bank accounts for all in a nation where 40% of the population don't have one. That would facilitate the payment of future state subsidies for the poor. Modi, famed for revamping industry in Gujarat state when he was governor there, underlining that modernising manufacturing and international trade are vital for India.
Go and sell all over the world, but produce and manufacture your wares here. We have skill, talent, discipline and determination to do quite a bit. We want to give the world this favourable opportunity. Come, make in India.
Come, make in India.
Modi's BJP party was swept to power in May on a wave of economic hope. He promised reforms to reverse India's fortunes as it sees growth stagnate, currently stuck around 5%, half its level of 2010. But so far, Modi has announced few major concrete changes, in part due to political obstacles in New Delhi. Indeed, Modi says his next priority is overhauling India's governance and bureaucracy. Amongst the first steps forwards, Modi announcing the end of India's Soviet-inspired 5-year plans. But as India remains on track to become the world's most populous nation in just over a decade, Modi's task to tackle poverty is huge. A quarter of the world's malnourished people live in India.
Turning to some of the day's other business headlines now. Finnair has cut its profit forecast for the year as it reported quarterly losses of 20 million euros, falling from profits of 7.5 million a year ago. The state-controlled airline could fall into further difficulty with its routes to Asia if Russia decides to ban European flights through its airspace. H&M sales jumped a higher-than-expected 17% in July from a year ago, its 10th straight month of double-digit growth. The Swedish fashion retailer was cautious about its outlook for the rest of the year, though, saying it could be impacted by rising labor costs in Asia, where it produces most of its garments. And it's been 100 years since the Panama Canal opened for business, connecting the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans and revolutionizing global trade. Nearly 80 kilometers long, it handles about 5% of total world shipping now, with 18,000 vessels passing through each year. It's also undergoing a controversial and expensive makeover, a $5.3 billion expansion project that's running more than a year behind schedule. And finally, the U.S. theme park operator SeaWorld has said it will build bigger enclosures for its killer whales, planning to double the size of the tanks over the coming years. The firm also pledged $10 million for orca research and conservation. SeaWorld has been facing huge protests since the release of a documentary last year that details the 2010 death of a trainer by one of her whales, and which questions the company's practices in capturing and housing the orcas. SeaWorld shares have lost over 35% of their value this year, and its second quarter revenue was $40 million less than analysts had expected. Animal rights campaigners say the new tanks aren't enough to appease their concerns, but SeaWorld hopes they'll go some way towards boosting its lagging attendance rates.
Well, let's just hope that the whales will be happy in their new environment. Thank you very much, Kate Moody, for that. And it's time for Media Watch, and our very own James Creedon is here with me in the studio. Hi,